Greetings, Pintpot here. Welcome to my latest episode of Climbing the Curve, the series intended to make you the shearer rather than the shorn that little bit faster. Today I'm taking a look at the Vanguard tank. Now the Vanguard is the NC specific main battle tank. It costs 450 vehicle resources to pull, it's on a 20-minute cooldown timer, it's a two-man vehicle with a main gun and a secondary gun on top. You can flip between the two seats by pressing F1 for the driver's seat and F2 for the gunner seat. Now of all the main battle tanks, the Vanguard has the heaviest frontal armour. It can effectively take one more hit on its frontal armour than the other main battle tanks. It's in the middle in terms of speed, with the Prowler being the fastest and the Mag Rider the slowest. It is, however, the least manoeuvrable of all the three tanks. It has the hardest hitting guns of all three factions, but also the slowest to reload. And these various traits have several implications in terms of gameplay, which I'll discuss a little later. Now, before you pull your first Vanguard, you should invest a few certs to considerably improve it. If you select the Vanguard on your vehicle menu and have a look down at the bottom, you'll see that there's a number of different tabs. Select the one for utility and you have three different options. The one you want to upgrade is Vanguard Shield. This is the specific ability which only Vanguard tanks have. Unfortunately, it's a little expensive, being 100 certs to invest in for the first grade. However, this ability absolutely makes the tank, and I strongly recommend you pick it up before going into combat. The second thing you want to pick up is on the defense slot is Nano Auto Repair. This will start automatically healing your tank 12 seconds after you receive damage. Once that's upgraded, select your main gun. Click on the empty boxes to the right of the gun and choose the optic option. Select the 1.25 optic, upgrade that at the cost of 1 cert. Now do the same for ammo. This again costs 1 cert. Rinse and repeat for your secondary gun, which is by default the Basilisk, which is a heavy machine gun. Once this is done, you're good to go. Now your default weapon is the heat gun. This is an all-round effective weapon against both armour and infantry. The splash damage on it has a 4 meter radius, which means an indirect hit which is near the enemy is liable to kill it. However, be warned, the reload time is a full 4 seconds. This means that misses on your main gun are punished to a greater extent than they are on the other main battle tanks and the lightning tank. And this has two major implications. The first is that the tank is not very good at firing when moving. As you can see from the footage, the turret is not stabilised. Now the Prowler has the same problem, but it gets to fire 2 shots and only has a 2.5 second reload time relative to your 4 seconds. This means it can afford to miss more shots than the Vanguard. For these heavy hitting but slow firing shells, it is imperative to make sure you hit your mark as much as possible. Now the other implication is that Vanguards are not very good against infantry. Like any main battle tank, they can one-shot an infantryman if they hit them, but when you compare it to the other main battle tanks, you'll see the problem. A Prowler is capable of firing 2 shots every 3 seconds, each of which is capable of killing an infantryman if it hits them. Now the Mag Rider gets 1 shot every 3.75 seconds. Now this sounds very comparable to the 4-second reload time of the Vanguard. However, the Mag Rider is also a lot more manoeuvrable than the Vanguard. It also has turret stabilisation, so it can fire effectively on the move. This means it's capable of getting much better angles of attack than the Vanguard can, and therefore is much more effective at killing infantry. So if it's not particularly good at killing infantry, what is it good at? Well, the answer is that it is the best tank by some distance at short to medium ranges against other tanks. And the reason for this is a combination of its heavier frontal armour and its special utility ability, the Vanguard Shield. Now the Vanguard Shield will be activated by pressing the F key. Once activated, the tank starts to glow blue and you absorb a tremendous amount of damage over the duration of the shield. So much damage in fact that in my experience it is almost never broken. This allows you to do 2 things. First, as in the situation there, it allows me to be aggressive in terms of going out and exposing my tank and still be able to get to safety by activating my shield. This despite the fact that there were multiple enemies firing rockets at me all at the same time. And the other implication is that when you're fighting enemy armour at short to medium term distances, in other words distances where you can more or less reliably hit them, then by activating the shield, you buy yourself enough time to effectively brute force down the enemy armour before they have a chance to really hurt you. This means that for a Vanguard whose shield is not on cooldown, you can very competently engage enemy armour at close distances without much fear of too much damage. However, once you've used your shield, it's imperative to rush to safety once it expires. If you stay out of the enemy LOS after your shield has expired, as I do here, then the low maneuverability and acceleration of the tank work against you. Therefore it is imperative to remember not to get too greedy, but to stick with the timings on your shield. And it is for this reason why it is so critical that before you take out your Vanguard, you upgrade it to have the Vanguard shield. The entire rhythm and timing of your attacks in the Vanguard are based around the cooldown on your shield. Now the next question is, how is the default gun in terms of its ability to fight armor? Well, as you can see from the statistics I put on the screen, on paper it's pretty decent. However, it's important to take note that it comes off a pretty decent second best against armor piercing rounds. The compromise being that armor piercing rounds have effectively no splash damage, so only a direct hit will hurt infantry. Therefore, you're definitely sacrificing utility against vehicles for flexibility with this gun. Now the other thing you might have noticed is that the time to kills are very comparable to the lightning tank. However, remember that the main battle tank has the support of its secondary gun. A dedicated anti-tank secondary gun, such as the Halberd, does comparable damage to the heat gun on the main battle tank. And there are two major implications from this. The first, that it is imperative to run with a gunner if you really want to get the full potential out of your tank. Particularly if you're facing an enemy main battle tank, without a gunner, you're going to be at a very severe disadvantage. And the second is against enemy main battle tanks that are running a dedicated anti-tank setup. In other words, armor-piercing rounds plus an anti-tank weapon on top. You are going to be at a pretty severe disadvantage. Now the default gun you're given, the Basilisk, is pretty decent. It's capable of engaging effectively both light and heavy targets, plus aircraft. However, its DPS drops considerably at distance versus armor. Therefore it's important to remember that with the default loadout, this tank has limitations in terms of its ability to engage armor. It can still provide extremely good damage versus enemy armor, but it is not a dedicated anti-tank setup. Therefore, if you're looking to engage enemy armoured columns, you should be doing so with the support of other tanks rather than attempting to solo it. So, in conclusion, the Vanguard is an incredibly tough customer and extremely effective at engaging enemy armour. However, it has its limitations versus infantry. This combined with its limited manoeuvrability means you should always be looking to push forward with infantry support rather than racing ahead. Also, remember to time your attacks against enemy armour or when your shield is available. A Vanguard being played effectively in this style can slowly whittle down entire columns of enemy tanks, much to the frustration of enemy tankers. So my advice, invest a few certs, grab a friend and see how it goes for you. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, dislike, comment or subscribe as appropriate. Now my next episode, I'm going to take a look at upgrading the engineer class. In the meantime, have a good one, happy hunting, and Pintpot out.